Will Tyler Herro be able to stay healthy this season? Can Jaime Jaquez wind up starting? And does this new era of Heat basketball belong to Bam Adebayo? We open up the mailbag to answer that and more on today's Locked On Heat.
You are Locked On Heat, your daily Miami Heat podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, welcome to Locked On Heat, your everyday podcast on the Miami Heat. Whether you're tuning in on YouTube, Odyssey, or your favorite podcast app, thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. I'm Wes Goldberg, editor at allyoucanheat.com, here with David Ramil. Both of us are credentialed Heat media members, and the best way to support the show is to leave a 5-star rating and review on your podcast app, and make sure you hit that subscribe button here on YouTube. We are opening up the mailbag today. We've got questions about Tyler Herro's availability, the greatest rookie seasons in Heat history, and more. But let's start with this question from AJ, who writes us, with Jimmy's era coming to a close soon, is Miami's next era Bam Adebayo's? And if so, what timetable would you put on his era? If not, what direction do you think Miami would go in the post-Jimmy timeline? What do you think, David?
I think it almost has to be by default. And I know we're already going to get some people saying, no, there's no way. Bam's just not that kind of player. Even on yesterday's Locked On NBA episode, we debated what Bam's role would be like on a title contending team. And it's hard to kind of see him as anything better than the third best option. I think, I think that's realistic. I think he can be an okay second option, which is definitely what he's been. But you need the right roster kind of complement him because he's so impactful in so many different ways. But in terms of his scoring production, it's going to be hard. I think that's how the Heat front office view him. They're going to turn the keys to the car over to Bam at some point once Jimmy's tenure in Miami ends, whether that's next offseason or at some point sooner or some point later, who knows? But I think it's going to be Bam's. In terms of how long that window is going to be
open.
Can
I ask a question?
Sure.
Because you did the show with Matt yesterday?
I did. Yes, I did.
What did he think? Did he disagree with you in terms of Bam, third best player on a title team? Did he think he should be better or worse?
No, I think he thinks he's a third best player. Bam, for all the grief that Matt gets from Heat fans, and a lot of it is deserved, I understand. He likes to poke the bear a little bit. He's also a huge fan of Adebayo in terms of what he brings defensively. But it's just that, you and I have talked about this a number of times. It's just, I don't think Bam is just wired that way to look to get his shot first and foremost. And I being the guy that he sets up everybody else, makes plays, sets screens, etc. He loves to do all the dirty work. And so that kind of just screams role player, right? It's the fact that he's so impactful offensively, despite the fact that that's his mentality, and in combination with what he does defensively, and makes him an elite player. If you want to view it as a role player, that's fine.
I think he's elite at basically everything at his position other than scoring the basketball. I think he's an elite passer as a center. I think, and Nikola Jokic not being a part of, because he's just generational. Elite passer at his position. Obviously an elite defender at his position. He is an elite rebounder at his position. His defensive rebounding rate is crazy. I know he doesn't get as many rebounds, but his boxing out, it creates so much rebounding for the team. He is an elite rebounder.
So strong, yeah.
The Heat are an elite rebounding team when Bam Adebayo is on the court, is maybe a better way to say that. He's elite at all of it. Elite leadership skills. He's elite at all of this stuff. And he's pretty good at scoring the basketball. He's not elite. And so the more you can get him to do the things that he's elite at, I think the better served he would be, and also the better the Miami Heat would be, right? And I'm not saying that he can't ever be a better offensive player. I also think that people who expect more from him offensively, it's just what more do you want from this guy, right? There's not a whole lot of players doing the things that he's already doing, and you wouldn't be asking that if he wasn't thrust into having to be the number one scoring option as often as he is, for a lot of different reasons. So he reminds me a little bit of Draymond Green and Chris Bosh kind of combined, where it's Chris Bosh was, as Bam Adebayo, always more talented of an offensive player than Draymond. Draymond doesn't really have an offensive staple. He doesn't have a sweet spot in terms of scoring the basketball, but he's a very good passer. And the more you can just let him do the little things, the better he's going to be. And with Chris Bosh, as good as he was in Toronto, it just wasn't an efficient form of an offense in terms of him posting up and doing the things that he was doing with the Raptors. And then when he came over to Miami, he was able to play off of LeBron James and Dwayne Wade. And if Bam Adebayo was able to play off of a legit number one scoring option the way that Chris Bosh was and that Draymond Green has been, whether it's, Kevin Durant, Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, I think the people begging Bam Adebayo to score more, that would go away overnight. It would go away overnight, and everybody would appreciate how good of a player he is. And I agree with you. Like Chris Bosh, I think Bam should be the third scoring option on a championship-winning team. Maybe that makes him the second best player on both ends of the court. That is less interesting to me, but I think he would be the third. He needs to be the third best scoring option, or the third scoring option on a championship team, probably. All right. In terms of the timetable, what do you think?
I mean, we're talking a number of years. You're barring injury or anything else like that. I think, again, they lean into Bam. 27 years old. We're looking at probably 5 years. I think, again, they view Bam as a Heat lifer. I think it's 5 years beyond next season or however long Jimmy's on the roster when they kind of officially say this is your team now. And then you just go through the process of trying to find the right personnel, the right scoring option that takes over that scoring load, and then kind of allows Bam to settle into what is probably a more comfortable role for him. And I'll say a huge caveat in all this is we don't know. And we talked about this before when kind of extrapolating what his three-point shooting might do to his overall game. Like if he's able to connect on even a decent number of threes throughout the consistent regular season, and he ups his points per game average to closer to 24, 25, that's like MVP type player considering everything he does in offense as a passer, a screen setter, a defender, etc. Like that's elite. That's elite. That's a top 15, top 10 player. So that's what you kind of were hoping for. And it might happen. It might happen. We don't know. The 3-point shot is just, it's such a hope and a prayer, but it might work out for him. As far as the window is concerned, yeah, I see it 5 years beyond that, but I think he's going to be in a Heat uniform throughout the rest of his career.
Yeah, whether or not Bam Adebayo is a player worthy of having an era named after him or not, the fact of the matter is he is the team captain. He's going to be the leader on the captain. And when Jimmy Butler leaves, whatever star player sort of backfills Jimmy Butler, if one does, whatever the next star player the Heat acquires, they're going to be taking their P's and Q's from Bam Adebayo in terms of that first year when they're in the building. They're going to go to Bam and say, how do I fit in? What do you need me to do? How do we do all this? Because those are the kind of star players that the Heat tend to go after. And I think that there's a respect around the league for Bam Adebayo that any player who comes into that locker room is going to be asking Bam, how do I fit in? What do you think I should do? And they're going to be looking at him as a leader just like anybody else on this roster currently does. I think he's going to be a really great player until he's 34, 35 years old. I see no reason not to think that. But, I think we're sort of in his prime right now. I think his prime is going to last a number of years, and I think he'll still be a really good player until he's 34, 35 years old. Maybe that's the championship window. Now, is he the best player, the second best player, the third best player, the fourth best player on a championship winning team? I don't know, but I think he's capable of being a core player on a championship roster probably until right around then. All right, let's go to the next one really quick here. Malachi writes in, tell me, why does my guy Bam why has he not been labeled the Heat's best player? Is it because Jimmy is that much better offensively? To me, this is Bam's team. Why is he so underrated throughout the rest of NBA fan bases? There's a lot there. We've talked about Bam being underrated before a lot. I just think it's the stuff that doesn't really show up on film, the stuff that doesn't really make highlight reels. He's not on SportsCenter top 10s. Like, that's not really what Bam is doing, and I think that's why he is underrated. It's really hard to, even defensively, right? Like, it's easy to see guys like get a bunch of steals, get a bunch of blocks, and it's like, all right, cool. Where Bam is a little bit more like what Darrell Revis was sort of during Revis Island.
Yeah, erasing possessions. Yeah, nobody throws him, nobody shoots over him. So it's just like, it's a possession that didn't exist.
Yeah, how do you measure something that doesn't exist? And it's the amount with that does not exist that is the thing that you need to measure, which, like, there's only so many different variations of zero that we could talk about here. But in terms of why Bam has not been labeled the Heat's best player, it's simple. It's because when Jimmy Butler is engaged, he is still Miami's best player. Bam was their best player last year because Jimmy Butler wasn't engaged. But Jimmy Butler 2 years ago, after that playoff run, there was no doubt that Jimmy Butler was still the Miami Heat's best player. Now, I think that is more up in the air because of what happened last year than it ever has been. If Jimmy Butler comes back and looks like he did 2 years ago when he was an all-NBA guy, then he's still going to be Miami's best player. It's just sort of wait and see. But I think the belt is a little up in the air right now in terms of who is the Heat's best player for the first time in a real long time.
Yeah, I'd agree with all of that. I think, Bam certainly last year was the more consistent player, the better player, by whatever statistic you want to look at it or whatever criteria you want to use to determine that. At the same time, I think if Jimmy is, if we kind of overlook because of his postseason heroics, what he's able to do during the regular season, when he is a couple seasons ago, that kind of player that he was, that's a much different version. That is an all-NBA player. That is a guy who could be an all-star, except he's not going to take Adam Silver's call when he gets it. He just doesn't care about those kinds of things anymore. It doesn't matter. He doesn't need those accolades at this point.
And Bam
so
does.
He's just, yeah, and Bam does. He's carving out his legacy. Jimmy's legacy is much more established. And what is it established as? An all-star player that becomes beyond all NBA player when it comes to the postseason. That's what we've seen from him.
The stuff of legend in a playoff legend and a Hall of Fame lock. He's a Hall of Fame lock. And
wouldn't everybody want that? Like, if you think about it,
yeah.
like think about whatever job you might have. Let's say you go through the humdrum of your 9-to-5 cubicle job, but when it comes to get that big client or that big presentation or that big sale, whatever it might be, you get it done every time. Like, who cares if you kind of blow off Tuesdays and Wednesdays and you don't show up to that ridiculous office meeting that nobody really gives a damn about? You're there when it counts. Like, who wouldn't be seen as a superstar in that scenario? That's why it's Jimmy's team.
All right, let's move on. Is Tyler Herro right about the team's health, and what do we expect out of him this season? I'll tell you why he should be in for a bounce-back year after this on Locked On Heat.
Today's episode is brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your car alive, and eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. From superchargers to roof racks, exhaust kits to LED headlights, and so much more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. And with over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber and not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions to apply, and eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. We'll be right back.
Thanks again for making Locked On Heat your first listen of the day. For your second listen, enjoy the Locked On NBA podcast. There's no offseason in the NBA, and Locked On NBA provides daily basketball analysis from national and local experts in 30 minutes or less. No one keeps you as informed and entertained as Locked On NBA, available on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Ira writes in, will Tyler Herro stay healthy? I feel like folks are down on him after last year turned out not being his big breakout. Does he still have another level up in him? So in terms of whether or not Tyler Herro is going to stay healthy, I don't know. Now, we did our stat draft yesterday. I took, I think with my second pick, the over on Tyler Herro's games played next year. He played 42 games last year. I just don't. 2 years in a row of freak injuries. I know.
Yeah.
A broken hand in the playoffs 2 years ago. It's just like, at some point, he's got to get a good break, right? And when I say that, I mean not breaking anything. So it just feels like he's due for a healthy season. So I think he'll be healthier than 42 games. I think he'll play 65 plus. I feel pretty good about that. Again, hoping that just not another freak injury happens. That said, that is a big reason why his breakout didn't happen last year, because it kind of looked like at the beginning of the year. I remember doing shows with you at the beginning of the season talking about, hey, Tyler Herro's kind of breaking out right now. He is having an amazing, offensive season before the injuries started happening.
Yeah, no doubt. I think it's spot on. I realize, we can't predict that. I also look at it from this perspective. Like, Tyler has so much banking on this season to kind of ultimately prove to himself, to the front office, the Heat fan base, that he can be a good player. Like, the expectations for him have been so all over the map from the day he was drafted. He was this little white kid that nobody really knew about in Kentucky. And then it's like, oh, wait a minute, this guy's got swag. This guy can kind of put the ball up. It was so fun to watch as a rookie. And then all of a sudden you're thinking, sky's the limit for this guy. Second season, not as great. There was the pandemic shortened season. It was a little difficult, etc. He couldn't do any workouts. He couldn't do anything. He had that long NBA season in the Orlando bubble. It wasn't the same kind of offseason. And then in his third season, sixth man of the year. That's great. Again, all of a sudden, expectations fluctuating constantly. I think he's going to be healthier. I think, to the second part of the question, absolutely he has another level to his game to achieve. I think it's a combination of improving the things that he does well and incorporating some new things, being able to create a little bit more space off the dribble, being able to get to the line a little bit more frequently. And as long as he can continue to incorporate what we've already seen from him, that he's an elite NBA shooter, he's going to be a really good scorer. And I still think a fringe all-star candidate.
This guy has averaged 20 points per game 3 years in a row. He has established himself as one of the best three-point shooters in the NBA. And I think by far Miami's most dynamic and best three-point shooter. He's averaging also 5 rebounds per game and over 4 assists per game over these last 3 years. He's one of the best free throw shooters in the NBA. This guy has so much going for him, and it feels like so many people focus more on what he can't do than what he can do. And the thing that he can do is just be a 20-point-per-game scorer. This guy is so consistent. And I think we don't ever use that word with Tyler Herro, but in terms of just producing points, now you can have issues with the efficiency and all that stuff, which certainly that's fair.
Warranted, yeah.
Yeah, but the guy puts up points on a team that desperately needs points all the time. And has been having, and you mentioned Sixth Man of the Year and all these things, on a game-to-game basis. Am I the number 1 option? Am I the number 3 option? Am I coming off the bench? Like, what's going on? And he's been asked to do so many different things. Do you need me on the ball, like against the Celtics in the playoffs? Do you want me playing more off the ball, like when we were healthy towards the end of the regular season and we traded for Terry Rozier and all of these things? He has had to do so much and hasn't really, and has had to do it differently on like a week-to-week basis. This is not a young guy who got a chance to play for a bad team right away. They went to the finals as a rookie, right? And so he doesn't really have the space to kind of explore all these things, but he's been asked to get good at all these things while having to play a limited role on a team that has established stars and leaders. So it's been tremendously difficult for him, I think, in terms of his role. I know I'm the Tyler Herro apologist. I don't care. I think the guy has so much talent.
Or the hater, depending on the night of the day, or it's just like,
I guess
he's
somehow
been all
I come
over
off as a Tyler Herro hater because I don't think he's going to be an all-star, and I don't think that should be the expectation. I don't think he'll be a perennial all-star. I don't know. I'll put it this way: he'll never be the number 1 option, and I don't think that he should be, and I think that's fine. In terms of him hitting that next level, there is another level for him to get to, but we just have to redefine what that level is, and I think that next level is being a more efficient and more volume three-point shooter. There is zero reason for him not to shoot. He should be shooting 10 3-pointers a season. He's been averaging 8.
You made the comp of Klay Thompson before.
Yeah.
Like, Thompson's a Hall of Famer, right? And not just because
multiple
of his
time
success,
all-star. Yeah.
But at the same time, would you make him the number 1 option on your team?
Never. He was never the number 1 option, and this is my point. If you think Tyler Herro is going to lead your championship caliber offense, you're going to be disappointed. But if you think he could play a major role in a championship caliber offense, then you might not be disappointed. Let's go to our next one here. EJ Brooksy writes in, is Tyler Herro right? Is this team a championship contender when healthy? So our friend EJ here referencing Tyler Herro's interview with Forbes, friend of the program, Matt Issa, talking with Tyler Herro about something about Crocs and gunk getting out of the sink. And within that branded conversation, was actual good journalism happening. And Matt asked the question. Tyler Herro said, look, I think you see Philadelphia, the Knicks, all these teams improving externally. I think we're going to be improving internally when you consider Tyler Herro being healthier, Jimmy Butler being healthier, Bam always getting better, Jaime, Nico, adding Khalil Ware. And he said that he thinks that they have everything they need to compete for a championship when healthy. Is he right? Is he wrong, David?
I think so. And I know people think I'm delusional. And again, for everything that I'm somehow branded as both a hater and a delusional apologist for this team, I don't know how that works, but hey, that's the comments for you. I think so. Like, I cannot separate what this Heat team has accomplished over the last few years. And a lot of that banks on Jimmy Butler being healthy and engaged, a huge X factor any season, but also getting more production across the board from guys like Bam, Tyler, et cetera. It needs to be a combined effort. You don't have that one superstar that can just take over games and just kind of let them go to work and do things. Like, you don't have KD, you don't have Steph Curry, you don't have LeBron James. That's not a luxury or prime Dwayne Wade. Those players are so few and far between. So Miami has to do it collectively. That's what it's going to take for them. So I think, given this team's depth and everything else that Tyler laid out as far as his reasoning, I don't think they're scared of anybody. I think they can contend with the Knicks. I think they can contend with the Bucks, the Sixers, and even the Celtics. Would the Celtics be viewed as a more talented team? Absolutely. But I've made that argument for years. Talent is an unquantifiable element that people try to label in many different ways and use it when it feels convenient to them. I don't know how talent is being used. I would say that a lot of people view Boston as a more talented team, but guess what? Miami's had their number, when they've been healthy and they've had everything going, and even when they haven't been healthy. Everybody remembers the Eastern Conference Finals that Miami won, where they escaped Game 7 because of Jason Tatum's fragile ankle. At the same time, Jimmy Butler's fragile ankle had been beat up for a couple of series already, and he still played through it. So I think regardless of health concerns and everything else, they've got what they think they need. And that confidence goes a long way. And it stems from Jimmy, who has set the bar. He's the straw that stirs the drink. He has created and instilled a belief in what they're capable of. And while it sounds like bravado from any other teams, we've seen it. This is a team that's gone on deep playoff runs despite that lack of talent. So I think so, yes.
I love your optimism. My answer is I have no idea. Maybe. I don't know. I just don't know. We haven't seen this team healthy in quite a while. Sure. Jimmy Butler is 35 years old. He will be in September. Terry Rozier is a part of the team now. That's not a bad thing. You replace Kyle Lowry with Terry Rozier. I think that's an upgrade, but we haven't really seen an extended look at this team yet, so I don't really know what to make of it. And you've lost a lot of key players and replaced them with, I think, more talented players, but younger players like Nikola Jovic and Jaime Jaquez and Khalil Ware and stuff. So I don't know. You still have Eric Spoelstra. You still have Jimmy Butler. You still have Bam Adebayo. I'm never going to count the Miami Heat out. I'll tell you that much. I'm not afraid of the Knicks. I think I'm not as high on them as I think most consensus NBA observers are. I think their offseason was fine, but Philadelphia, I think Philadelphia is going to be awesome. I love the addition for Paul George for them. They won the offseason. I don't know how you look at it any other way. And the Celtics just won the championship. But we're talking about two teams in the Eastern Conference. I don't think we're talking, it's not even the Western Conference where it feels like there's 10 really good teams. I think you're looking at two legitimate championship. Oh, and I'm higher on the Milwaukee Bucks, I think, than NBA consensus is also. But again, it's not like this daunting path to the finals in the East, where I think you could probably argue that in the West. So my answer is I don't know. Put them in the playoffs if they're healthy. Let's see what happens. I'm not going to count them out. You're right. On paper, they'll be the underdogs every single round every game against the Celtics, the Sixers, the Knicks. They'd probably be underdogs against the Pacers. Again, just saying what FanDuel would put the odds at. Probably be about even against the Pacers. But they'd be underdogs against Milwaukee. It hasn't stopped them before, right? So I'm not going to count them out. Does Jaime's rookie season crack the top 5 in Heat history? I'll tell you why I don't think it does after this. Thanks again for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. If you're new to us on YouTube, hit that subscribe button. You can also follow us on your favorite podcast app. Continuing on with our mailbag, Zaydubs writes in, rank the top 5 Heat players based off of rookie year. You can even base it off their first 30 games, so guys like Nikola Jovic can get in. I wonder what Zaydubs wants me to say. Seems like he's bending the rules to get Nikola Jovic in here. Nico, loved what we saw from him last year. He is not even close to being on this list, David. And I'm so excited to get your take on this because you're kind of like the Heat history guy. But just for Jovic, because he was specifically asked about in this question, I'll even extend it to his first 61 NBA games. He's played 61 NBA games in his career. He's averaged 7.1 points on 44% shooting, 3.7 rebounds, 1.6 assists, a career VORP of 0.4. It's good. It's fine. I love sort of the intangible stuff that we saw last year. I love the flashes. I love everything that it looks like he can be. But in terms of the actual production, he's not even close to being one of the best rookies in Heat history. So,
100%.
Here's what I did. I went ahead and I looked at VORP, value over replacement, on StatHead, Basketball References stat searching site. Here's the top 5 rookie seasons in Heat history according to VORP. Okay. Sherman Douglas is number 1 in 1989 with a 2.1 VORP. Dwayne Wade is number 2. Caron Butler is number 3. Khalid Reeves is number 4. and Mario Chalmers is number 5.
What
Kind
year
of the
was
guys on
what
the
year was
bubble.
what year was Reeves drafted? Was that 94?
94. Well done. Yep, 94. So now, just a quick VORP explainer before I put anybody to sleep. VORP values games played and time played pretty highly. And so Sherman Douglas played basically 20 more games than Dwayne Wade did his rookie year. That's a big reason why he's got his VORP is at 2.1, Dwayne Wade's is at 1.9. So it's not like this dramatic difference. If you look at like a different sort of value over, not value over, if you look at box plus minus, which is another basketball reference stat that kind of strips away the games played and the availability part, Sherman Douglas and Dwayne Wade are even at 1.4. So that was the VORP list. On my list, Dwayne Wade had the best rookie season in Heat history. But Sherman Douglas was not far behind. His stats are awesome. Dwayne Wade, his rookie year, 16.2 points per game on 46% shooting, 4.5 assists, 4 rebounds, 1.4 steals. Sherman Douglas, 14 points on 49% shooting, so higher shooting percentage, more assists, 7.6 assists, fewer rebounds at 2.5, but more steals also at 1.8. And he played 81 games. Dwayne Wade played 61 games. So the games do matter, I think, especially when you talk about a rookie. Getting on the court as a rookie in and of itself is an accomplishment. That matters, right? And so
it was a different team. It was the second year of the
Sure.
expansion. They won 18 games. That's like you taking a pick, you know. Again, it wasn't even like a great pick, you know, but at the same time, he put up a lot of points. Like, where does Beasley's rank? Like, I feel like I think he had a kind of underrated. I think he had an underrated 2008 season. Chalmers, you know, he played because he was a second round pick, but again, I don't think that I don't think he was all that impactful despite whatever.
Oh, come on. What are you talking about?
It was 2008. Like, what did they do in 2008? Like, he wasn't the ballyhooed pick. It was Beasley who was a second overall pick that year.
I know, but Chalmers had the better season.
In terms of what?
Played all 82 games and started all 82 games. He averaged 10 points, 5 assists, and 2 steals. I mean,
who was he beating out? Who was he beating out as a point guard on that team?
I just remember him looking really good that year. I mean, he looked like the long-term backcourt partner next to Dwayne Wade. That was a home run pick.
They benched him a couple of years later for the Puerto Rican kid.
We're talking about the rookie. We're talking about rookies, rookie seasons. Doesn't matter what happened. He also won 2 championships. They benched him, and then he got himself back in the starting lineup. Michael Beasley shot.
Rio is confident enough on his own. He doesn't need you. He doesn't need you lauding him.
Okay.
Like, he's confident.
It's kind of my thing though.
Yeah, I guess you're right.
I would have him in the top 5. I don't really care about where. I think Caron Butler talk about underrated rookie seasons. We kind of forget about it.
Sure.
But he was awesome as a rookie to the point where 2 years later he was a huge part of the Shaquille O'Neal trade. And by the way, Khalid Reeves was so good as a rookie too that he was a big part of the Alonzo Mourning trade. So they were sort of kind of similar in that regard too.
But
really. What do you mean?
No, he was kind of a throw in there. Like, he was.
Yeah, he was more of a throw in than Caron Butler. It's fair, but he was good enough to be a throw in.
Glenn Rice was the player.
Yeah.
That Charlotte wanted. You know, they got
Lamar Odom was the player that the Lakers wanted.
I guess he wasn't he? Was he the centerpiece of that trade? Ryan
Odom
Grant was a good backup center.
Yeah, Grant was.
Butler was a good young player.
Yeah,
it was kind of between Butler and Odom. I think you could say either one of them had like good high potential as a potential all-star. They both. Wait, no. Odom never made the All-Star team, did he?
Odom made one All-Star team the year before he came to Miami. I think I have that right.
No, as a Clipper, there's no way.
As a Clipper,
think so. No way.
Maybe the first. Maybe it was like right around that time. That's okay. It's neither here nor there.
All right.
In terms of the VORP list, I'll throw you a few more names that just missed the cut in top 5 in the VORP rating here. Bam, it was at 0.6. Grant Long was at 0.5. Josh Richardson was at 0.5. Jaime Jaquez Jr. was 22nd in VORP among Heat rookie seasons at 0.1. Would you have put Jaime's rookie season in one of the best 5? I don't mean to just be like VORP guy and analytics nerd. It's not the end all be all. If you wanted to put Jaime in terms of having one of the best 5 rookie seasons ever in Heat history, I would not argue it, despite the 22nd placement on VORP.
It's kind of hard to quantify because I think he exceeded expectations because they were so low, but at the same time, the team itself did not reach the expectations a lot of people had for that group, and so it kind of gets lost in the ether. And again,
he was first team all rookie, which that matters, right? You were one of the best rookies in your class. That's important too.
It was Dwayne and who else in Heat history that had been making all NBA teams, all rookie teams.
Did Josh Richardson
Can't
make it?
No, I don't think so. But he had that late season surge
Yeah,
here,
it
and
was
certainly
more-
Justice did not. So it's hard to remember all these things.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Ryan
it was a
Chalmers,
great
maybe.
season. Yes. I don't know. It's hard. It's hard to say. I think
All
he
rookie
kind of
second team,
deserves.
Ryan Chalmers.
I think he
I'm okay with him
deserves
deserving it. Yeah.
some recognition. Yeah. It was a great
in.
year. It was really good. He was a really good player. It's hard again. Like, this is a different team than a lot of the rookies throughout the early Heat history that had an opportunity to be much more productive, but it didn't matter because they were going to win a lot of games anyway.
Kurt writes in, how do you not start Jaime Jaquez Jr.?
We made that case yesterday, and I think it's a pretty strong one. Like, you've got Jimmy Butler for as long as you're going to have Jimmy Butler. Again, I don't think unless you see Jimmy early on and impossibly unrealistically he's just done. I don't think that's the case. I don't think he's anywhere near done. But if it's just, you know what, no matter what, he looks old and slow and can't play and he's unhealthy or he's injured, even worse, then at that point in time, you kind of have to start saying, you know what, we're not going to get increased value out of Jimmy Butler. It's probably best for us to kind of lean into a sort of pseudo youth movement and start Jaime. But other than that, there's just no case to be made for putting Jaime at this point in time, the way he played last season, over any decent version of Jimmy Butler.
I mean, I guess the argument would be you start both of them.
Yeah.
Right? They could both play forward. They could both,
Yes,
like, Jimmy could ostensibly play he could play the 2 guard, right? He's played 2 guard.
Do you think that's the right fit? Is that the best balance for Miami? I don't know that it is. Unless, again, the 3-point shot for Jaime takes a huge increase.
Well, that's the thing. And that's my answer is, how do you not start Jaime Jaquez Jr. when he shoots 32% from 3? Because you have to start Jimmy and you have to start Bam, right? Those are the guys that are in Sharpie. You're building everything around them. You're also building everything around 2 non-floor spacers. And I know Jimmy shot more threes last year than he ever has with the Heat. And I know Bam is adding the 3-point shot to his game. The percentage might go up. The volume is never going to be there to the point where they're considered floor spacers, right? There's a difference between making a few threes every once in a while and being a floor spacer the way that, like Jimmy Butler is not going to be guarded like Duncan Robinson is. Bam's not going to be guarded on the perimeter the way that Cat is going to be guarded.
Is Jokic a floor spacer?
He is more of a floor spacer because the volume has been there, and because
plus the assists too,
and the assists, and he operates up there. And I would actually argue that Bam does space the floor in kind of different ways when he does get that more of that dribble handoff stuff. Now Miami inverted their offense. They asked Bam to create 3-point shots last year. His post-up numbers were way up last year. He was 3rd in the league in post-ups per game, and they sort of inverted it that way. But if you get him more on the perimeter where he's setting screens and stuff like that, then he does space the floor, but not as a shooter. And so you just need, around Jimmy and Bam, 3 legitimate, bona fide, high volume, high efficiency shooters. And Jaime just isn't that right now. Now, when he becomes that, then you can have that conversation. That said, I made the point earlier this week. I don't care if he starts. I think he's going to close. I still think he's one of Miami's best 5 players, but you don't have to start your best 5 players. I think your starting lineup is more about fit, setting tone, getting into a rotation pattern that makes sense for the rest of the game. It's an 82-minute game. It's a 48-minute game. Sorry, it's an 82-game season. It's a 48-minute game. It's not a 5-minute game, right? You got to make the rotations make sense throughout. So I do think he's going to close because I think he's one of their best 5 players. And I think all that kind of stuff matters a little bit less when you're just needing to make plays in the last 3 or 4 minutes of a basketball game. All right, that'll do it for us today. Thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. Like, comment, and subscribe on YouTube, and follow us on your favorite podcast app.